Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, new names possibly to consider within the Texas Tech head coaching search and a spring football camp primer. Let's go!
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you again for making us your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, and today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Chris, great to be back with you, man. Wrapping up the week, and what a busy time for Texas Tech fans as you've got activity in all directions. Lady Raiders in action. You've got a Texas Tech baseball conference opener in the LBK this weekend. We got spring football just around the corner on the other side of the weekend. And of course, we're sitting here with bated breath, wondering what could be to come very soon as it relates to the Tech head coaching search. So we're going to get to a little bit of all of the above and somewhat even more interestingly as we join one another now, Chris, on the heels of some tournament games, some seasons coming to an end. And here they're wondering, does this season coming to an end impact Texas Tech's coaching search? Some of those questions out there, I guess, to be asked as we wrapped up the week.
Yeah, and as we sit here and talk, it's St. Patrick's Day, so get you some green beer today, people. Have you a bowl full of Lucky Charms and get after it. So there's all that. Yeah,
and eat the cereal. Don't just pick out the marshmallows, kids.
Yeah, and did you know you can actually buy just the marshmallows like on places like Amazon.com? Kind of blew my mind when I saw that. I'm like,
I have heard that.
It's like a life hack.
Chris. Yeah, the one dude they sold it to, though, they had to knock down a bedroom wall and carry him out with a forklift. Did you see that? I think they call it my 600-pound marshmallow life, something like that.
There you go. That is quite
Happy
possible.
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, that's quite possible. Yeah, big baseball series, obviously tonight, as you mentioned, too, just because that's, Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, we're right there at the top of the preseason predictions as far as, and Oklahoma State comes in here with I think a number 12 ranking. Texas Tech just on that right, barely inside the top 25. I think ranked number 22. So, yeah, this one will be a big one here. And the weather it's not exactly baseball weather this weekend. Going to be a bit chilly. So bundle up. Yeah, bundle up if you're going out to Dan Law. And credit to the Krista Gerlich's Lady Raiders, as you mentioned, first, I think, postseason win. What did I see in 12 or 13 years? Hey, it's a WNIT. I think it makes sense for them. They'll get another home game on Monday night against SMU. So kudos to them. Hey. You're making some progress.
And since you mentioned that kind of streak for the Lady Raiders looking back in time, let me just mention for no reason whatsoever, the last thing I heard last night as the Aggies were getting waxed by Penn State and the little announcer guy told me, the Aggies don't have a tournament win since 2001. Woo! Okay, now we may continue on.
And the irony there is that do you remember putting up the graphic the other day of the top 10 paid coaches in the country?
I sure do.
Yep. Buzz Williams is on that list.
Bob
Huggins is also on that list. They both
that's right.
Early and out.
Both gone fishing.
Yeah, that's right. So
I love Buzz too. You got to like a man that'll get dressed up in a 3-piece suit to get his ass kicked on national TV.
and sweat all the way through it. Because
he wasn't the best, Buzz.
Yeah, he does perspire. Yeah, he always missing the watch with the chain. Yeah, he's always had ties to the state of Texas. I mean, I think if he was somewhere off like he was at Virginia Tech or he was at Marquette, like were previous stops of his, I think he would be a prime candidate for your head coaching job just because he's got so many ties to the state of Texas. But yeah, let's just go into,
Chris, isn't that a good example of like a name? Just, I don't mean to backtrack too much, but that was a big hire for the Aggies when they made it, and it's gone ever since he arrived. I mean, you never know. You never know what's going to translate when it comes to prior success and what you got going on with your program.
And I think that's well said, and that's why. And it's impossible to ultimately know, but that's why the quote unquote fit is so important. You can have good coaches, okay, and there are a lot of really good basketball coaches, but that's not the whole part of what you're trying to do. It's and so the fit and again, fit can kind of be a lot of different things. But if you don't have the right fit at a job, and it really doesn't matter what sport you're coaching in, it sometimes it just doesn't work. It just doesn't, and it's not lay of the land. It's not the recruiting component. It's not your personality and the way you deal with media and boosters. It's not in some cases not necessarily about postseason success. It's not about budget. But it is about all of those things. So that's the thing. It's like it's up to the committee to kind of determine, and again, like I think a huge component is who you surround yourself with, not just roster, but staff. And if you have no ties here, you better have a lot of people around here that somewhat do or have a familiarity with the league and all those things. But I think that's that's well said, because I mean, I don't think he's done a whole lot. He had a good year this year, but the SEC was somewhat down, and so I think that's a great example of. I mean, it's just like Porter Moser we were talking about the other day. I mean, Final Four, man, and that's elite level stuff, and then just hasn't really translated in Norman. It just has not, and then he's about to switch conferences and all those things. So.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into some of these guys? Because
I'm kind of wondering like who was popping out to you maybe when their season came to an end and you thought, oh, okay, maybe his phone is available now. Is there anybody like that yet? But first, today's episode brought to you by America's #1 sports book, FanDuel. And now is the perfect time to download the FanDuel app. Become a new customer because new customers get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't hit. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. Safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line, point scores, 3 points drained if basketball is your thing, or all points in between. Underwater basket weaving, anyone. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with that same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering like who was popping out to you maybe when their season came to an end and you thought, oh, okay, maybe his phone is available now. Is there anybody like that yet?
I think, Grant McCaslin's name is going to be in this thing until it's not. And what I mean by that is until he says, no, I'm not going there, or until Texas Tech makes a hire, I think Grant McCaslin is going to be kind of in the mix here. They won their first NIT game. They will play Sunday afternoon against Sam Houston State. They could very well likely, I think they're hosting that game, they could very well likely win that one, and he could kind of continue on here. So we'll keep an eye on that. Andy Kennedy, UAB, did the same thing. Won their first game. I think they play like Morehead State maybe on Sunday in the second round of the NIT. So both of those games are on Sunday afternoon. So at the end of the weekend, so you won't know, anything. Not that they can't talk to you or anything. I just don't know if they can drop everything that they're doing and like get on a plane and come out here, or or drop what you're doing and you go out there and see them as they've still got games to play. But Oral Roberts' season is done. If you want to call Paul Mills, the runway is clear if that is somebody that you are interested in. And I think at the very least they've either touched the, felt that situation out a bit and maybe would progress with it. I don't know if he's as much in it as say a guy like McCaslin is, but I don't really know. But I do think he's a name of interest. We'll go that route. I think today, I think it's important to note that you have a guy like Randy Bennett at St. Mary's, who's a new name that you kind of hear some things about that may have interest, or Tech may have interest in him. He plays at 1 o'clock in Albany, New York, against Virginia Commonwealth. So
I hadn't heard that name. Is there an obvious connection there, or is that just from the ether, so to speak?
So Cowan, I think Randy Bennett has been at St. Mary's since like 2000, 2001. He has not. He's been kind of in his nook there in the mountains there in California for 20 plus years. And to be honest with you, he's just crushed it. He's, I think, won 30 plus games, 19 of the 22 seasons he's been there. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, now granted, I think some would say, well, you're in the West Coast Conference, but this is Gonzaga's league. And this is also the league, I believe, that BYU participates basketball with. Well, so you get to thinking to yourself, why would somebody, after being there for so long, why would they leave now? And why would they leave for Texas Tech? Nothing against the Tech thing, but it's like you've had other opportunities to leave, because I think it's well documented. Stanford went after him. Cal went after him. I think Arizona State has kicked the tires there before, because I think he's originally from Phoenix. And this is Coach Bennett's like around 60, 61 years old, I think. And so, but there's a lot of realignment talk out there about Gonzaga and the Big 12. And I think there's a lot of people that feel like that is somewhat imminent, that Gonzaga will pack up and move all sports to the Big 12. I can't say if that's for sure or not, but there's a lot of people that believe that.
All sports.
Yeah, which I don't know how many sports they participate in. I'm just thinking about men's basketball, but I think it's and baseball. They're good in baseball, but again, we're so focused on football. But I think this would be basketball driven, if you will. And again, what do the finances look like? I'm not real sure. But point being, if you look up and you're Randy Bennett and you're the St. Mary's head coach in the West Coast Conference, and you look up and your two primary rivals, or your main one, and then maybe even like a 1A in BYU, they're both gone. Exactly what league are you in now? You know, and so maybe that does make sense that he would all of a sudden look to leave now with the league. And again, this is just me kind of trying to connect some dots on the timing.
Sure.
But again, I think it would be an interesting fit. He's very much tied to the Australian and the European player. You know, you go look at the team pictures, and it's a bunch of Australian and European guys. It's just like and they're very skilled. But it's a finesse game. I don't know if it translates in the Big 12. That's for other people to decide if he is a legit candidate or not. Yeah. So, but they play today. That they would be a bit of a favorite against Virginia Commonwealth. So there's that. I'm trying to think. Steve Alford's team has already lost. Chris Jans's team has already lost. So you're starting to get to the point where there's not many folks left that are still playing. But I mean, again, Andy Kennedy, Grant McCaslin, and I guess Randy Bennett. Now here's you a different name that you have not heard, I don't believe, and that is that of former Charlotte Hornets head coach James Borrego. I think he resides in Albuquerque. He's in his mid-40s. I think he's a kind of an NBA lifer, a longtime assistant coach with the Spurs, won 2 championships there, spent a lot of time with the Orlando Magic. And I think at some level he is in the mix here. And you're going, where is this coming from? And I don't really know. I just know that I would term him a very a person of interest in this search. And I think that to the committee's credit,
it just sounds so cops-ish.
Well, and I don't know any other way to
don't leave the
it.
country.
Yeah,
I like it.
He's a potential candidate. He's
that's right. You're a suspect.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. Do some of those things, Chris, maybe are they impacted by like the search firm, not the search committee, but like the national, I guess?
They
firm,
could be.
Maybe?
I mean, the search firm is going to have, suggestions. It's really up to the internal folks to kind of vet all that and go, yeah, this doesn't work for us, or keep searching, or or hey, we appreciate you sending us that, but we also want to talk to these people. And this one is a unique one. How he became involved, but I mean, I think to the either the search committee or the internal committee's credit, I think it's a very much outside the box thought process, because let's think it through here. Your roster is kind of changing year to year, the way that things are working with NIL and transfer portal and all those things. So, and that's kind of very similar to the NBA. And everybody calls it, what's like free agency in college? Well, it may be nice to have a guy that is well versed for the last 15 plus years in the NBA, that's got the hardware to prove it, to basically look at a recruit or a prospect and say, I know exactly what you have to do to get to the next level. Because that's what these guys, right, wrong, or indifferent, most players think they have eyes on the next level, and whether it's overseas or playing professionally in the NBA. And I think that would be a hell of a recruiting pitch, man. I mean, I think you would be a bit of you'd be different. And I think in some different ways, it would be an outside the box hire if you went that way, similar to what Joey McGuire was. When Joey wasn't a coordinator or a head coach technically, and you end up striking gold a bit with him. And it's early in his tenure, but at this point right now, I think that we would agree that that was a really good hire. And a lot of people criticized it. A lot of people was like, this is going to work. With a guy like Borrego, it makes you different. And I think it would be about who he surrounded himself with. I think that would be an important, cog there. But again, I just give you the other name that I've heard, and I keep being asked about this name, but I've not really heard anything. I mean, it would make some sense in that he's done really well. They did lose yesterday to San Diego State, but Pat Kelsey of College of Charleston, his name gets being tossed around. He's one of these mid-major types. They won the Colonial Conference. He just signed a 5-year contract and agreed to it, I want to say 3 weeks ago. But it pays him a little over $1 million a year. I think it's small escalator clauses. Again, would he ultimately sign a deal and then leave? Would he? I'm sure there's a buyout there, but I'm sure you could eat that if you needed to, if you were interested. Anyway, I don't know anything about him being a candidate, but I keep getting asked about him, so I wanted to mention him. I don't know if I've missed anybody here, but I feel like we've tried to give you a good grasp of it.
You've added a couple.
Yeah,
I hadn't heard, and I would guess maybe some Locked On Texas Tech viewers or listeners hadn't heard of either. Just before we move on, just the NBA facet of that particular candidate. Will you give me his name one more time? Eric.
James Borrego.
Borrego.
Yeah, Charlotte Hornets.
I was just going to say the only concern, obviously, building a college program, continuing to sustain the rebuilding of a college program. The recruiting trail is a whole other monster, unique unto itself on the college level, obviously. And it goes double when you're in the Big 12 conference and something as competitive as what this league is. That may be the only thing that you think, oh, well, I hope he's ready for a big time change as far as, putting his program together. And I don't know. I just would imagine NBA wise, that's got to be quite a bit different if that's what your perspective has been through your career.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know for sure, but he's been, Charlotte made a move. It's just weird because, learning all about Borrego and all these things over the last, a few days. And you look up Michael Jordan going to sell his stake in the Charlotte Hornets is the news out there. And, but Jordan and the Hornets made a move mid to late April last year. And so he kind of missed all the college cycle, all of those jobs of him, all the movement there is, because you skip ahead to a month from now and everything will have sorted out on new hires and firings and all those things. And so he's just kind of been, I think he's been in Albuquerque, but a young guy. And I think, you get the sense very much family guy and wants to, and maybe doesn't want to do the NBA thing anymore where you're just like gone for, I don't know for sure. I'm just saying maybe a change is in order, but I think
Sure.
it would make some sense. I think in a lot of ways. And again, I think what you touched on, it's really at that point, because nobody can deny his basketball chops. Okay. I mean,
Right.
that
Yeah.
part it's just about, teaching him the college world. And that's why you surround him with college assistants that are well-versed and know what's up, and maybe guys with ties here. I think that would be, and so you kind of wonder if that may be a direction they would go. But I think you can be intrigued by Randy Kennedy, really any of these guys, because I think Grant McCaslin could absolutely win basketball games here, man. And I think he could win big. I just don't know enough about, Paul Mills yet. I do think that he makes sense as a candidate for sure. I think Andy Kennedy, a lot of people on the internet and message boards on RedRaidersports.com have kind of said, no, Andy, I would disagree. I think he would be a really good fit here. It doesn't mean that I would be right or that he ultimately would. That's just my opinion. I don't know if Steve Alford makes sense to me at this point. I don't mind saying that. I don't think Rick Pitino makes sense to me at this point. And since we last chatted, KJ Allen also entered the portal as well. So there's another update on the roster. I don't know. I don't think that's a surprise, but maybe he goes back home closer to California and all those things. But I did want to update everybody there.
And you said just a moment ago, I think it was just an amalgamation of the two, but you said you could be intrigued, or a Tech fan could be intrigued by Randy Kennedy. Was that Randy Bennett?
Yes.
Was that the name? Okay,
yes.
that's St. Mary's, right? Randy Bennett?
Yes. And see, this is what happens to me when you start talking all these names, and I just screwed up and I meshed them together. Yeah, I don't know why.
It's all good. I just wanted to make sure because that was a new name to me.
Yeah, Randy Bennett and Andy Kennedy, and then I
one.
So sorry about that. Yeah,
hey, this will all be over soon, Chris. We'll have one name to concentrate on.
I can't wait.
We'll get to know that one.
Yes, for it to be over.
All right. Well, I appreciate the update and some insights there. A couple of new things to consider as far as the head coaching search. We will keep it Texas Tech coming up dead ahead, but let's hit the gridiron because just on the other side of the weekend, we got about 3 days, I think a Tuesday kickoff. Spring camp is on the horizon. And this is a spring camp, something a little unusual in recent years. And by recent, I mean about a decade. This is a spring camp that brings with it hope, optimism. Let's explore that next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket has arrived. I know you got your favorite bar or puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorite and maybe be a winner in the process. I'm voting for that churro, baby. Team Churro 2023. Let me know where you're at BuiltMarchMadness.com. When you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you're going to be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. And not only that, but one Locked On fan is going to get a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your doorstep. You can't beat that. You got to try Built right now. If you haven't before, Built is the best protein bar ever. For real. So amazing. You're not even going to think they're good for you. What makes Built bars and puffs so good? For starters, all high in protein, low in sugar, covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right. Real chocolate. So run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff, churro like me, or go your own way and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March. So hop in and support your pick at BuiltMarchMadness.com. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech, coming to you from west of the 100th Meridian, where it's really going down in the frigid great state this weekend. Stay warm out there. Warm up by the warm fire of a Locked On Texas Tech episode. Catch up on anything you might have missed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts this week. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't so far, so you never miss an episode. Last time I looked, we tipped over that 2,600 peak. Chris, it feels good, and we appreciate everybody out there saddling up, subscribing on YouTube. Thank you so much
Absolutely,
Real warm
man.
feeling.
Yeah, subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. We certainly appreciate it. It helps this show out. And again, if you want to be a sponsor here and let Cowan and I talk about your product or business or whatever, man, reach out. We would love to be a part of that as well. So we appreciate all the interest, and we'll keep rocking on, man.
Yeah, what a wild time over the last couple of weeks, and we appreciate you guys out there
Or
spending some of it
decade.
with us. Yeah, a decade here on Locked On Texas Tech. Unfortunately, we've only been around since August in this capacity, so we weren't with you then, although via other mediums. Chris, before we get out of here, let's just spend a little bit of time touching on what's coming down the pipe next week, and that is a Texas Tech football spring camp. Red Raiders obviously like what they got from Joey McGuire in year one. It's been fascinating this offseason to just observe what the record is versus what the fervor kind of feels like. And the fervor does not mirror your record. It mirrors opponents you beat that matter to your fan base, Longhorn Sooners, and it mirrors your most recent results, which was a pretty handy winning streak to wrap up the regular season and then beating an SEC opponent in the bowl game. So, Chris, I don't even know that it's so much the totality of last year. Like, man, we really love the records you threw out. But it was like, hey, most recently, we're having the most fun we had all year long. So I think that was really part of what sustained your offseason energy and momentum. And I don't know about you, but I feel quite a bit differently heading into this spring camp as compared to some I have in many recent seasons gone by, where you're just wondering, all right, well, what are they coming up with this time around? But this time around, you're actually looking to build off of some real success.
Yeah, I guess at 4-5, Joey pounded his hand on the desk right there and was just like, "We ain't losing no more," and they didn't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that really happened, but it would be good if it did. But that's because we always say this when you talk about football records and stuff, and you know this, but you finished 8-5, and there are different 8-5s out there. Okay.
Oh yeah.
There's the hollow feeling 8-5. There's the disappointing 8-5. There's the exciting 8-5 or the optimistic 8-5, which is, I think, that's what this one was. And I think when you look at it and you're like, okay, you beat that Texas, Oklahoma, and you lost your last 4 games, including your bowl game, somewhat handily over an SEC team. Yeah, a lot to like. Oh, and by the way, you dealt with a myriad of injuries, especially at the quarterback position, to get that done. I mean, then that even you add another plus on there on the end of it too, and you feel extra good about that 8-5. So,
and you lost your best player during that stretch. Tyree Wilson wasn't
the last
on
3
the field
games
for a lot of that.
That's right. Yeah. He was not, and
Crazy.
he's about to be I mean, at this point, I'm going to be shocked if he's not a top 10 pick, which is just nuts. Former walk-on Tyree Wilson. Yeah. So, and that's true. So I think you touched on that. I think there's a lot of optimism and hope here as you start spring and building off of some of that momentum. Is that I think there'll be a lot of eyeballs on you, and I think that it'll be fun to kind of see some of these new guys. Like your Dre McCrae's, your Rusty Stats, guys like that, Steve Linton, CJ Baskerville, guys like that kind of ingrain themselves that are transfer portal types.
Let me run that down real quick. Dre McCrae, the ultra speedy receiver.
Yes.
Stats and Linton. Linton's the Syracuse kid, right? Where did Stats come from? I forgot. Western Kentucky?
Yes. Okay. And I think it stands to reason too. You kind of want to see Cole Spencer also from Western Kentucky too, because he's the one that missed. Because I think he's going to be a key. He's a starter. I mean, both of those guys are starters. I think that's your starting. I'm going to go left guard and center. I guess Spencer could be right guard too, but anyway, that's your starting center and your starting guard. And then, and then Baskerville.
And that means Wilburn where? I'm sorry, you just touched on that lineup. Wilburn right guard or
guard. He'll move to the other. I think Spencer and Wilburn are your 2 guards, and then stop your. Did we decide your mom or his mom reached out to you and said, is it Stotts or just Stats?
Stats. She said, "Don't go putting on airs, boys."
Okay,
Stats.
there you go. Okay, so Stats. So yeah, I'm going to screw that up. for the remainder of the deal. I'm gonna have to really ingrain that into the old brain there and kind of
Hey,
remember
just
that.
like a good mother, she'll be there to gently correct us and nurture
Yes,
us
and
along as we
I
continue to do so, I'm
apologize,
sure.
Mrs. Stats, for my because I've heard nothing. I've heard nothing but positives about Rusty and how quickly he's acclimated, how quickly he's led, how quickly he's just picked things up. And again, he already knows this offense, but I mean, this is going to be one of those sneaky, very key additions in this offseason because a lot of people are going to not, it's not the flashy thing as the offensive line.
Right.
But as you and I talked last year, man, as we were going through this, that center position, I mean, Dennis Wilburn stabilized the whole thing, and they weren't exactly great up front. But if you take him away, the wheels would have fallen off, and he
Oh, I
stabilized
think
it.
you said at one point late in the regular season that Dennis Wilburn could be one of your 3 most important players on the entire roster.
I think
one
he
of
was
your 3
your.
most valuable.
I think he was your offensive MVP. I really do.
Yeah, that's just
Yeah,
crazy, but probably true.
yeah. I absolutely believe that.
Well, in the O-line, man, I was going to say, I don't. Everybody can determine what they think they can learn from spring camp and what means what, but the O-line is where my attention will be focused almost exclusively, Chris, because I you want to talk about hope or optimism? I got some of that as far as the pivot for Coach Hamby and his offensive line from year 1 to year 2. Certainly a liability last year and a liability throughout the previous decade, save for some very, very infrequent moments. But with some of the additions you're describing right there, and hopefully a little bit better health luck, I mean, who knows how that's going to go? We'll knock on wood. I've got some optimism about this offensive line really taking a big step forward. And if you do that, you got a really good chance as a team, obviously, to take a step forward. But that is the key group of the spring for me. It's not sexy, but maybe that's not what spring camp is supposed to be about, man. In the trenches is where it's going to be decided once again. What do you think about the chance to really take a big step with that group from where they were last year to maybe next year?
Oh, I think, and I don't know. I think we could argue on how big of a step they can take, but I think drastic improvement is absolutely possible there. And again, it's how healthy can you stay, and then the spring, the task is to figure out, okay, if we're sitting here determining kind of who the 3 starters are in the interior. You need to create some depth there, because what are you going to do a year from now? Because I believe all 3 of those guys are seniors. So what are you going to do a year from now when all those 3 of those guys are gone? What are you going to do at center in both the guard spots? Okay, so there's that. And I think, but in the immediate need is kind of develop, okay, what's tackle going to look like for you? I think Monroe Mills, I think Caleb Rogers, I think Ty Buchanan, I think they're all candidates to be starters at either right or left tackle. I wouldn't assume anything there. I do think that, maybe when they broke apart from the bowl prep and all that, there was some thought that going into the spring, it would be Monroe Mills at left, Caleb Rogers at right, and let's make Ty Buchanan kind of the swing tackle, like the depth guy. But that could change a million times between now and the end of the spring or now and the beginning of next season. And hell, even into next season, that's just kind of how this stuff goes.
Right.
You'll
play a 6th offensive lineman at some point, I imagine.
Well, you saw some of that. Henry Teeter is kind of like that at times. But so it's after we go to 6, it's the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. That's what spring is about in many ways. Is that I think you feel like what Stats is, what Cole Spencer is to a certain extent, and you certainly know what Dennis Wilburn is. But you need to develop depth and kind of some chemistry and all those things because the health of Tyler Shuck and Baron Morton kind of they're going to count on it. So we'll see. But I think that's a key position to pay attention to throughout the spring because if there is improvement there, and I'd be shocked if there's not. Because you already were really good on offense last year, and I think we would all agree you're pretty average on up front. And it just, again, some injuries, and then you're just doing the best you can. I think Kitley did a phenomenal job of kind of masking a lot of that. But I think if you get some improvement there, it just, it's a domino effect. It allows for a lot more play calling and and some different things. And I think you'll be faster this year on offense too. So we can get into that in the coming days.
Well, the aforementioned Dre McCray, a big reason as to why that could be possible. And before we get out of here, Baskerville on the defensive side, the San Diego State transfer, right? And I think, doesn't he have some all-conference accolades at San Diego State, I thought?
Yeah, and he's if you want to think about like how he fits in, I mean, he will be basically Muddy Waters' replacement. I mean, that star position, I guess, which is kind of the hybrid that you're like a linebacker / safety. You play kind of closer to the line of scrimmage. You cover the slot at times. You can rush the passer at times. I mean, and I think they kind of see his skill set, factoring in there.
Man, it's going to be exciting to get back to it. And of course, that means on the other side of that, the real one is coming down the pipe. I think we're 100 days away from 100 days away from kickoff.
I was about to say, man, I'm like, just 100 days away. Sign me up. But I think, I got you.
Yeah, maybe about 70 away from 100, something along those lines. So get your countdown clock tuned up. You still got a little bit of time. But, man, looking forward to just seeing what they can come up with within this spring camp. Do we have early enrollees to mention? Anybody on that radar? I'm trying to think.
There are some. Maybe we can get into. It's
really going to factor in, you think, or
yeah, we can get into some of that next week. But I think, namely, some DBs that I think have a chance to factor in early, specifically at corner. Some depth behind. Rashad Williams and Malik Dunlap. So, but there's some early enrollees I think that we can get into for sure. And I just kind of highlighted the early enrollees, if you want to call them that, like the portal guys, because I know they're going to factor in right away for sure.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have a wagon load of spring camp coverage over the coming weeks as we get that started next week. And of course, keeping a close eye, like if you had a monocle or something, on this Texas Tech coaching search. Hope you enjoy the weekend, enjoy the NCAA tournament, and join us again on the other side on Locked On Texas Tech on Monday. Make it your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And we hope for your second listen, you'll check out Locked On College Basketball. It's the one-stop college hoops shop on the Locked On Podcast Network, available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Locked On College Basketball for your second listen. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, thanks for the time and the perspectives as always, man. Have a great weekend.
Enjoy the madness, people. I know everybody's brackets are busted, man, but hang in there. Just enjoy the sport, man. Enjoy the sport. St. Patrick's Day is here, so enjoy that too. We'll talk to you early next week.
And you let us all down, Colgate. Go to your room and think about it over the weekend before you come out. Go to bed with no supper. All right. Hope you have a great one. We'll see you on the other side on Locked On Texas Tech.